Welcome to today's touching story. If you love stories about love, forgiveness, and the power of faith, hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss any of our videos. The night blanketed the city with faint streetlights piercing through a thin layer of mist. On a quiet street in a modest neighborhood, Emma Carter hurried along, carrying bags of groceries for her grandmother. The cold wind whistled through the old buildings, but her mind was too occupied with overdue bills and the sting of recent job rejections to notice the weather. Not far away, Julian Hayes, one of the city's wealthiest and most powerful figures, was driving his luxury car down the deserted streets. A prolonged meeting and heavy thoughts about his life caused him to lose control of the wheel. A sharp screech echoed through the night as the car veered off course, crashing into a lamppost before flipping onto its side. Smoke began to rise from the hood, shattering the stillness of the night. Emma froze, her eyes wide, staring in the direction of the terrifying sound. Without hesitation, she dropped her bags to the ground and ran toward the car. The scene that greeted her made her heart race. A sleek car lay on its side, its windows shattered, thick black smoke billowing from the hood. "Is anyone in there?" Emma shouted, trying to mask the fear in her voice. "I'm here," a weak voice called out from inside the vehicle. Bending down to peer through the shattered window, she saw a man slumped against the driver's seat, his face streaked with blood, and his suit disheveled, clearly belonging to a world far removed from her own. But Emma had no time to wonder about his identity. "You have to get out now. The car could explode at any moment." Emma yanked at the car door, but it was jammed tight. Undeterred, she found a large rock nearby, smashed the remaining glass, and used all her strength to pry the door open. The man, though injured, tried to assist her, his voice raspy from the smoke. "My seatbelt! It's stuck!" he gasped, his breaths uneven. Without hesitation, Emma reached in and pulled at the seatbelt with her bare hands, her trembling fingers fueled by sheer determination. After several attempts, she finally managed to free him. She helped him out of the car, and the two stumbled away just moments before the vehicle erupted into a blazing fireball. Both collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air. Julian turned to Emma, his eyes filled with a mix of astonishment and gratitude. "You just saved my life," he said, his voice still weak but full of sincerity. "Just doing the right thing," Emma replied, paying no mind to the intensity of his gaze. "You need medical attention. I'll call an ambulance." Julian shook his head, attempting to stand despite his unsteady legs. "No need, I'm fine." "Fine? You just escaped a burning car. Stop pretending to be tough. You need medical care." But Julian, with his usual pride, refused. He didn't want the incident to go public due to personal reasons and media concerns. Emma frowned at his stubbornness. "You're impossible. At least let me help you to a safe spot." Reluctantly, Julian agreed, leaning on Emma as they moved toward a nearby bench. While he caught his breath, Emma checked her pockets for her phone, briefly thinking about the groceries she had left behind. "You really don't need to do more for me. I'll manage," Julian said, studying her face intently. "You look like someone who's definitely not managing," Emma replied bluntly. Julian gave a faint smile, a rare gesture since the accident. "I owe you a great debt. What's your name?" "Emma," she replied curtly, her guarded eyes meeting his. "Emma, I'm Julian. I want to thank you for saving me," he said, pausing as his expression turned serious. "If you ever need anything at all, don't hesitate to contact me." Emma waved him off, shaking her head. "I don't need anything from you. It was just the right thing to do." Julian raised an eyebrow, unaccustomed to rejection. "Are you sure? I can help." "No," Emma interrupted. "You should focus on taking care of yourself. Goodbye." Before Julian could say another word, Emma stood and walked away, leaving him seated on the bench, gingerly tending to his wounds. He watched her slim figure vanish into the night, an inexplicable mix of admiration and intrigue swirling within him. What do you think of Emma's courageous act in saving Julian on that fateful night? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. It was not ordinary gratitude. Emma saved him without expecting any benefit in return. This left Julian, a man who had experienced many relationships based on self-interest, unable to stop thinking about her. A thought flashed in Julian's mind. She's unlike anyone I've ever met. But who is Emma, And why does she refuse everything like that? That night, lying on the hotel's hospital bed, Julian couldn't sleep. The image of Emma, with her resolute eyes and brave heart, lingered in his mind, marking the beginning of an emotional journey he never anticipated. Julian Hayes, a man accustomed to controlling every aspect of his life, found himself swept into something beyond his grasp. Emma Carter. From the night she saved him from the burning car, the image of her determined eyes and trembling yet resolute hands had never left his thoughts. On the first morning after the accident, still lying in his hotel room, Julian held his phone, scrolling through news about the incident. However, there wasn't a single mention of Emma. This left him both surprised and relieved. Determined to learn more about her, he called Simon, his trusted assistant. "I need you to find someone," Julian said, his voice low and firm. "Who, sir?" Simon asked, accustomed to his boss's unusual request. "A girl named Emma Carter. She lives near the East Side Park in the city. Keep this discreet. I just need information about her." Simon asked no further questions, quietly taking notes before getting to work. Just a day later, Simon returned with a detailed report. Julian sat in his office, his eyes fixed on the file before him. "Emma Carter, 24 years old," Simon began reading the details. "She lives with her grandmother, Mrs. Donna Rose, 78, who suffers from chronic illness and requires regular medication. Emma has worked several part-time jobs but is currently unemployed, actively searching for work to make ends meet." Julian sat in silence as he read through the rest of the file. Emma's modest home, where rent took up most of the budget, along with medical expenses and utility bills, left them with barely anything to spare. He felt a sense of empathy he hadn't expected. "Did you find out why she refused help?" Julian asked, his eyes filled with curiosity. Simon shook his head. "Not clearly, sir, but she seems to be someone with a strong sense of pride." Julian was silent for a moment before turning to Simon. "Arrange for her to get a job opportunity at the company. Don't let it be known that I'm behind this." Simon nodded and began making arrangements. Emma received a call one morning as she was preparing to leave for a job interview. She froze when she heard the warm voice of a woman on the line. "Hello, Ms. Carter. This is Marta Silva from Hayes Enterprises. We happened upon your profile and would like to invite you for an interview for an administrative assistant position." Emma's jaw dropped. Hayes Enterprises? That was one of the largest corporations in the country. How did they know about her? "Are you sure you've got the right person?" Emma asked, her voice full of doubt. "There's no mistake, ma'am. We believe you're a good fit. The interview will take place tomorrow at 10 a.m. Will you be available?" Emma hesitated. This was a huge opportunity, but also shrouded in questions. Still, she couldn't let her doubts stop her from giving it a shot. "Okay, I'll be there," she replied. The next morning, Emma entered the towering skyscraper of Hayes Enterprises. The overwhelming sight of the modern and professional environment filled her with nervousness. She adjusted her simple blouse, reminding herself not to show any signs of unease. The interview went more smoothly than she had expected. Marta Silva, the HR manager, was very friendly and made her feel comfortable. When Marta smiled and said, "We are pleased to have you on board," Emma could hardly believe her ears. On her first day at work, Emma walked into the office with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Her face lit up as she received her employee badge from Marta. Everyone around seemed busy with their tasks, but the professional atmosphere made Emma feel as though she was standing at an important turning point in her life. What she did not expect was her first encounter with Julian Hayes at the company. During an internal meeting, Emma sat quietly in a corner, attentively taking notes on everything she needed to learn. When Julian entered the room, the entire atmosphere seemed to pause. He carried a natural air of authority, his sharp eyes scanning everyone present. Emma froze as she recognized the man she had rescued that night. She lowered her gaze, hoping he wouldn't notice her. But Julian had already seen her, and in that brief moment, his eyes flashed with surprise and curiosity. After the meeting, while Emma was gathering her materials, Julian approached her. "Emma Carter, right?" His voice was deep, warm, but sharp. She looked up, her heart pounding. "Yes, Mr. Hayes." "Welcome to Hayes Enterprises," he said, his eyes seeming to study her reaction. "Thank you, sir," Emma replied briefly, trying to maintain her professionalism. Julian nodded and walked away, but not without glancing back at her one more time. He knew she was surprised to see him, but he didn't want to reveal that he had been the one to arrange her position there. Over the following days, Julian quietly observed Emma. He was impressed by her hard-working and determined nature. Even though she was new, Emma quickly adapted to her role and even managed to impress her manager. One time when Emma was struggling with a challenging task, Julian happened to pass by her desk. He paused, looked at her screen and said, "I think you could solve this by simplifying the process. Give it a try." Emma looked up, slightly surprised by his unexpected help. "Thank you, sir. I'll try that." Julian gave a faint smile at her naivety. He knew he couldn't stay in the background forever, but he also wanted to give her the time to experience the confidence and success she had earned for herself. Within Julian, a strange feeling began to take root. For the first time in many years, he felt that someone could bring genuine change to his life. But did he have the courage to take things further? Emma, on the other hand, continued to focus on proving herself, unaware that fate was slowly pulling her and Julian closer together each day. As time passed, the interactions between Julian and Emma became increasingly natural and comfortable. At the office, though their relationship remained professional, small moments of interaction began to reveal sides of each other neither had ever anticipated. Are you still following the story? Leave a comment about where you're watching this video, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. One day, Julian invited Emma to join a new company project. It was an ambitious project, and Emma couldn't hide her anxiety as she accepted. "Do you really believe I can handle this?" Emma asked as Julian handed her the project documents. "I believe in you," Julian replied, his gaze sincere. "You have vision and determination. This is an opportunity for you to prove it." Julian's encouraging words gave Emma strength. Through their collaboration, Julian realized that Emma was not only intelligent, but also had a very practical perspective on life. This helped him see aspects of the world he had never paid attention to before. Once, during a meeting when senior managers were debating the budget, Emma boldly voiced her opinion. "If we invest in improving working conditions for employees, productivity will increase significantly," she said, her tone confident but still humble. Julian nodded, his eyes lighting up with satisfaction. "Good point, Emma. I want you to lead this effort. Do it well." Emma couldn't hide her surprise. To be trusted by Julian in such an important role was something she had never expected. Not only in work, but their conversations outside office hours also gradually became more personal. One afternoon, Emma happened to see Julian standing by the office window, his eyes distant as he gazed out at the city. "What are you thinking about?" Emma asked softly as she approached. Julian started, but then a faint smile appeared on his face. "Just thinking about the things I've missed in life. I used to believe that everything could be bought with money, but maybe I was wrong." Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with understanding. "Sometimes the most precious things are the simplest ones, Mr. Hayes." Julian chuckled lightly. "Just Julian. You can call me Julian." That simple statement seemed to bridge the gap between them. Emma began to see a different side of Julian, not the cold millionaire, but a genuine man who appreciated the little things. One evening, after completing a major project, Julian invited Emma to dinner to celebrate. Emma hesitated but eventually agreed. They chose a small restaurant, not luxurious but cozy. In the gentle light, Julian seemed different, not the powerful CEO, but a man trying to share something heartfelt. "Emma," he began, his voice warm and steady, "since you came into my life, everything has changed in ways I never anticipated. I've met many people, but none like you. You make me feel I can be better, that life can be more meaningful." Emma was stunned, her eyes wide. Julian continued, his gaze unwavering. "I think I've spent too long avoiding my feelings, but now I can't deny it anymore. I care about you, Emma, not just as a colleague or a friend." Emma didn't know what to say. Julian's words made her heart race, both touched and confused. "Julian, I really appreciate everything you've done for me, but we belong to two different worlds. I'm just an ordinary girl, and you—" Julian interrupted her. "You're not just an ordinary girl, Emma. You're extraordinary, and never think of yourself as less than anyone." Emma remained silent, her heart in turmoil. She could feel Julian's affection, but the disparity in their statuses made her hesitant. The evening ended in silence for both of them. Emma left the restaurant, her heart heavy with thoughts. As for Julian, he knew he had taken a risk, but he had no regrets. He believed that if his feelings were sincere enough, Emma would eventually open her heart. Their feelings for each other had begun to blossom, but the barriers of status and personal emotions made the journey ahead incredibly challenging. Late at night, the Hayes Enterprises office was quiet, with only a few lights on in some workrooms. Emma stayed late to finish an important report for a new project. While searching for a document in the filing cabinet, she happened upon an old folder mixed in with the current paperwork. Curious, Emma opened the folder. The words on the pages made her freeze. The document detailed a major business transaction by Julian's company, carried out many years ago. What shocked Emma was that this transaction had led to the bankruptcy of the small company where her father had worked. From that point, Emma's family had lost everything: her father's job, their home, and the stable future they once had. Emma's hands trembled as painful memories resurfaced. The arguments between her parents, their exhaustion as they tried to rebuild from nothing, all of it came flooding back. She couldn't believe that the man she trusted, the man she had begun to develop feelings for, was connected to the deepest pain of her life. The next morning, Emma couldn't focus on her work. She decided to confront Julian. The moment she stepped into his office, Emma's eyes were filled with anger and hurt. "Julian, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice colder than ever. Julian looked up from his computer screen, immediately sensing that something was wrong. "Emma, what's the matter? You don't look well." Emma placed the folder on his desk, her voice trembling but resolute. "Can you explain this?" Julian glanced at the folder, his expression changing as he realized what it was about. "Emma, Don't tell me you didn't know about this," Emma interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "You destroyed my family. This transaction caused my father to lose his job, caused us to lose our home. And yet you dared to stand in front of me, pretending to be sincere, as if you genuinely cared about me." Julian stood up, his eyes filled with regret. "Emma, please let me explain. At that time, I was only trying to save the company. I had no idea your family was one of the victims." "You didn't know?" Emma laughed bitterly. "So it's fine as long as you didn't know, right? As long as you saved your company, people like my family didn't matter at all." Julian stepped closer, but Emma backed away. "Emma, I can't change the past, but I can assure you that I never intended to hurt your family. I'm not the same person I was back then." "But you can't erase what happened," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Do you even know how much I trusted you? Trusted that you were different, that you genuinely cared about me. But now, I don't know what to believe anymore." Julian remained silent, looking at Emma with pain in his eyes. "I'm not asking you to forgive me, but Emma, please don't walk away without giving me a chance to make things right." Emma shook her head, her eyes red and swollen. "I can't pretend nothing happened. I need time, Julian, and I need distance." She turned and walked away, leaving Julian standing there, his heart heavy. For the first time in years, Julian felt powerless. He had lost Emma, the woman who had brought meaning to his life. From that day forward, Emma kept her distance from Julian. She focused on her work, but the pain still lingered in her eyes. Every time she saw Julian in meetings or hallways, the old wounds would resurface. Julian didn't try to push her. Instead, he began searching for ways to make amends. He asked Simon, his trusted assistant, to investigate whether the small company Emma's father had worked for could still be revived. He also quietly donated to funds supporting small businesses impacted during that crisis. Despite his efforts, nothing could erase the sense of loss he felt without Emma by his side. Julian realized that to salvage this relationship, he needed not only to change, but also to prove that his love for Emma was genuine. Both were deeply hurt, but was their love strong enough to overcome the past? The road ahead was filled with challenges, and the answer remained uncertain. By this point, can you guess where the story's headed? If you're curious, hit like and comment cafe to let us know you're following along on this journey. Julian Hayes, once a symbol of decisiveness and power, now felt powerless in the face of his crumbling relationship with Emma. But he refused to let himself give up. If the past was the reason Emma had walked away, He would do everything he could to make amends. In his office, Julian combed through old transaction records, investigating every detail to fully understand the impact it had caused. He discovered that the deal had led to the bankruptcy of the company where Emma's father had worked, severely affecting many other families as well. Julian decided to find a way to provide restitution. He reached out to former employees of the company, investigated their current circumstances, and offered financial assistance to help them rebuild their lives. But most importantly, he wanted to express his heartfelt remorse to Emma's family. One afternoon, Julian went to Emma's house. The small home was in a modest neighborhood, yet it exuded warmth and familiarity. He carried a bouquet of flowers and a small gift bag. When the door opened, Mrs. Rose, with kind but slightly surprised eyes, stood before him. "And you are?" she asked, her voice gentle but curious. "I'm Julian Hayes," he said, his voice deep and sincere. "I've come to apologize and to express my regret for what my company caused to your family." Mrs. Rose invited Julian into the house. He sat across from her in the small but tidy living room. Julian carefully recounted the entire story, explaining that he had not known Emma's family was one of the victims of the old transaction. He pledged to make amends, not just with financial compensation, but also through long-term support programs for those affected. "I don't expect you or Emma to forgive me right away," he said, his eyes filled with remorse. "But I want to prove that I truly regret my actions and am committed to making things right." Mrs. Rose remained silent for a moment, her eyes seeming to peer into Julian's soul. "You seem like a sincere person, Julian," she said. "But remember, forgiveness requires not just words, but also time and actions." Julian nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Emma had no idea that Julian had visited her grandmother. When Mrs. Rose recounted the visit, Emma was both surprised and conflicted. Her initial reaction was anger, that Julian had approached her family without notifying her, but as she heard what he had said and done, she couldn't deny the sincerity in his actions. "What do you think of him?" Emma asked, trying to hide her curiosity in her tone. Mrs. Rose smiled, placing her hand on Emma's. "My dear, Julian is not a perfect man, but I see genuine remorse and a determination to make amends in him. That is worth considering." Emma felt torn. Part of her was still hurt by what had happened, but another part acknowledged Julian's efforts and transformation. She couldn't deny that he had given her the opportunity to work and helped her regain confidence in herself. She spent a great deal of time reflecting on their relationship. She remembered the moments when Julian cared for her during stressful times, the times he listened and encouraged her. Yet the painful past remained a shadow over every hope for the future. One evening, while sitting next to her grandmother, Emma poured out her heart. "I don't know what to do, Grandma. He says he loves me, but how can I love someone who was the cause of my family's suffering?" Mrs. Rose quietly smiled, her eyes gentle. "Emma, loving someone doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means seeing who they are now. If you feel Julian's sincerity, then listen to your heart. Forgiveness doesn't mean erasing the past. It means giving both of you a chance to start over." Emma sighed, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "But what if I get hurt again?" "You'll never know unless you try, Emma," Mrs. Rose said. "And if he truly loves you, he won't hurt you again." In the following days, Julian didn't give up on his efforts to make amends. He tried to talk to Emma, but she kept her distance, responding to him only briefly during company meetings. Julian didn't blame her for that. He understood that rebuilding trust would take time. He continued to support Emma's family indirectly. Mrs. Rose's medical expenses were covered through a charitable fund Julian quietly set up. He also sent messages to Emma through small gestures, a bouquet of flowers, a note of encouragement when she worked late. Emma noticed these efforts and gradually felt Julian's sincerity. But was it enough for her to overcome her old wounds? She knew the answer lay within herself, whether she had the courage to give Julian another chance. Julian's journey of redemption and Emma's inner struggle continued to open new doors for both of them. But would they find a way to heal their relationship? Everything depended on Emma's choice, to listen to her pain or to her heart. On a rainy afternoon, Emma sat by the window, watching the raindrops trickle outside. After many days of soul-searching, she decided to confront Julian once again. She needed to hear from him directly. Not just an explanation, but why he was making such an effort. Emma sent Julian a short and clear message. We need to talk. Meet me at the cafe near the park at 6 p.m. Julian received the message while in a meeting. Despite his packed schedule, he immediately put everything aside. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for, and he couldn't let it slip away. At the cafe, Emma arrived first, choosing a table by the window. When Julian walked in, he wasn't dressed in his usual suit, but instead wore a simple white shirt and slacks, giving him a more approachable appearance than usual. Thank you for coming, Emma began, her voice calm but cautious. Julian sat down, his gaze gentle but filled with worry. Thank you for giving me this chance. Emma took a deep breath. I want to hear everything, no holding back. Why have you been trying so hard? And why me? Julian hesitated for a moment before answering. Emma, I've spent my entire life in a world where everything is measured by money and power. But meeting you, a person who didn't know who I was, who didn't care about what I owned, made me realize how much I was truly lacking. You saved me, not just from that car, but from my old self. You made me want to become a better person. Emma looked directly into his eyes, searching for sincerity. What about the past? Do you realize how much it has affected me and my family? Julian nodded, his eyes filled with regret. I know, and I deeply regret it. If I could go back, I would do everything differently. But I can't. All I can do now is make amends step by step, not just for you, but for myself as well. I need to right my wrongs. Emma was silent for a long time, letting his words sink in. She couldn't deny that Julian had changed. It wasn't just his efforts to make up for the past, but also the genuine sincerity in his eyes. Julian, she said, her voice gentle but firm, I can't forget the past, but I can forgive. What I need from you is absolute honesty. I don't want any secrets between us anymore. If you're truly serious about this relationship, we need to start over, building it on trust. Julian grasped Emma's hand tightly, his eyes lighting up with hope. I promise, Emma, no more secrets. I will always be honest with you, and I'll do everything I can to never let you down. Emma gave a small smile, feeling lighter for the first time in days. Then let's start over, step by step. After their conversation, the two decided to take a walk in the nearby park. Under the drizzling sky, they strolled slowly, their footsteps bringing them closer together. Julian shared with Emma what he had done to make amends for her family and others affected by the old transaction. He talked about the community projects he was undertaking, not just out of guilt, but because he genuinely wanted to change. Emma could feel Julian's determination and sincerity. Despite his wealth, she no longer saw him as someone out of reach. He had become someone truly approachable, a man she could trust. For her part, Emma also began to open up, telling Julian about the struggles she had faced while caring for her grandmother and her fear of losing her independence. Julian listened attentively, without judgment, simply being there to support her. I'd like to meet Mrs. Rose, Julian said as they paused by the lake. I want her to see that I genuinely want to be a part of your life. Emma smiled, her eyes filled with newfound trust. She'll like you as long as you bring a beautiful bouquet of flowers. In the days that followed, Julian and Emma slowly rebuilt their relationship. Julian kept his promise, hiding nothing from Emma. He even invited her to join a major charity project where they worked together to help those in need. Emma not only felt Julian's love for her, but also saw him truly becoming a better person. He was no longer a cold millionaire focused solely on profits, but a man with a heart full of compassion and a desire to give back. One evening, while sitting together on a bench in the small garden, Julian held Emma's hand, his eyes full of emotion. Emma, I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want you by my side every step of the way. You are the one who has helped me find true meaning in life. Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, smiling. And you've helped me believe that love can overcome any obstacle. We'll make it, Julian, as long as we're always honest with each other. Under the gentle moonlight, they began a new chapter of their lives, a chapter built on trust, forgiveness, and sincere love. As time passed, Emma became increasingly confident in her role at the company. With Julian's dedicated guidance, she not only became an outstanding employee, but also played an important role in improving the company's workplace culture. She proposed initiatives to balance profitability with social responsibility, something Julian was more than willing to support. Influenced by Emma, Julian also changed the way he managed the company. He implemented new policies to support employees and expanded charitable programs. Under his leadership, Hayes Enterprises became not only a symbol of business success, but also a beacon of humanity and generosity. Emma and Julian shared joy not only in their work, but also in their daily lives. Evening walks in the park, cooking together, and participating in charity projects strengthened their bond. One evening, under the soft lights in their backyard garden, Julian prepared a romantic dinner. Emma was surprised to see the table adorned with her favorite white flowers and candlelight, reflecting on her simple yet elegant dress. As the dinner neared its end, Julian stood up and took a small velvet box from his pocket. Kneeling on one knee, his eyes tenderly gazed at Emma. "Emma, you've changed my life in ways I never imagined. You're not just my inspiration. You're the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. Will you marry me?" Emma couldn't hold back her tears. She nodded, her lips trembling with a smile. "I will." The wedding took place in a warm and intimate setting, just as they had wished. The ceremony was held in a small garden by the lake, attended by their closest family and friends. Emma wore a simple but elegant wedding dress, her eyes glowing with happiness. Julian, in a dashing suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. When they exchanged their vows, their voices were filled with emotion. "Julian," Emma said, "you've taught me how to love, trust, and open my heart. I promise to always be by your side, sharing every joy and challenge in life." "Emma," Julian replied, "you've helped me find the true meaning of love and life. I promise to always love, protect, and respect you, from this day forward and forever." Grandmother Rose sat in the front row, her face beaming with pride and contentment. As Emma walked down the aisle after exchanging rings, she took her hand and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, Emma. You deserve every happiness in the world." After the wedding, Emma and Julian enjoyed their honeymoon in a small seaside village, where they could escape the busyness of city life and savor peaceful moments together. When they returned, they continued their work with renewed inspiration. Together, they expanded their charity projects, supporting education and healthcare for those in need. One afternoon, as the sun began to set beyond the horizon, Emma and Julian sat together on a bench in their small garden. A light breeze carried the fragrance of the flowers Emma had planted. "We've come a long way," Julian said, his gaze thoughtful as he looked toward the sunset. "And I know that whatever challenges lie ahead will be easier because you're by my side." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, smiling happily. "And I know that as long as we're honest with each other and never give up, we can overcome anything." Under the radiant sunset, two people from different worlds held hands, ready to face whatever life had in store for them. Their story was not only a journey of love, but also a testament to forgiveness, courage, and the power of faith. The story of Emma and Julian has come to an end, but their love and forgiveness will always be a valuable lesson. If you found this story meaningful, please hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel to spread positive messages. Would you like to see more touching stories like this? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss any of our videos. Thank you for watching. Stay with us to discover more inspiring stories. See you in the next video. Have you ever wondered if a wealthy, powerful person living in luxury could feel lost? Let's explore the story of Julian Fairchild, a young millionaire basking in glory, yet beneath his cold and arrogant exterior lies a heart weighed down by family pressures and difficult decisions. His story is not just about money or power, but a journey to rediscover the true meaning of life and love. Julian Fairchild, the sole heir of the Fairchild family, entered the meeting room this morning with his usual demeanor, a flawless suit, a confident yet cold gaze, and a smile that seemed to challenge the world. At the age of 30, Julian already possessed a fortune that most people could only dream of. But to his grandfather, Charles Fairchild, the founder of the family empire, Julian was still just an immature boy. Talented, wealthy, but irresponsible, Charles said, his voice deep and commanding, as the two faced each other in his private office. If you want to inherit the corporation, you need to prove you are worthy. Julian raised an eyebrow, feigning boredom. And you think the best way to do that is marriage? He laughed, but the smile quickly faded when he saw the sharp look in his grandfather's eyes. Not think, demand, Charles emphasized. No marriage, no inheritance. The choice is yours. Julian knew his grandfather never made idle threats, but the thought of tying himself to someone made him feel suffocated. To him, marriage was nothing more than a contract, something too mundane in his life of grandeur. A few hours later, rain poured relentlessly. New York City was drenched, its lights blurred through the wet glass of the luxury car Julian was driving. The simmering anger toward his grandfather hadn't subsided, but he had to fulfill his social obligation, visiting a colleague who had suffered a minor accident. The hospital was chaotic, with announcements blaring over the intercom and patients crowding the waiting area. Julian frowned, detesting the stifling atmosphere, but his eyes couldn't leave a scene in the distance. A young woman stood in the corner of the hallway, her whole body trembling, her eyes red and swollen. Clara Bennett, with disheveled hair and a desperate gaze, was pleading with a doctor. Please, my father can't wait any longer. I'll find a way to pay. Just save him. Julian froze, unable to suppress his curiosity. He didn't understand why he was drawn to the scene, but he knew that in that moment, the woman wasn't just fighting for a loved one, but for her fragile hope in life itself. Her desperation struck a deep chord in Julian's soul, a part he had ignored for years. And then, an idea sparked in his mind. Perhaps this was the opportunity he needed. Do you think a chance encounter can change the lives of two people from completely different worlds? Before we dive in, let me know which city you are following this story from. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to never miss meaningful stories. Are you ready? Julian Fairchild leaned against the hospital wall, his gaze fixed on Clara Bennett. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, not the glamorous women he was accustomed to at dazzling parties, nor the sharp-minded partners from the business world. In Clara, he saw a blend of vulnerability and steadfast strength. She wasn't pleading for herself, but for her father, a motivation Julian couldn't fully understand, yet found captivating. The rain continued to pour outside, as if echoing the storm within Clara. She sat slumped on a long bench, her trembling hands covering her face. Julian stepped forward, the sound of his expensive leather shoes creating a steady rhythm on the cold tiled floor. How much do you need to save your father? His voice rang out, not loud but filled with authority. Clara lifted her head, her red-rimmed eyes staring at him. Who are you? And what makes you think you have the right to ask me that? Julian shrugged, maintaining his calm demeanor. Someone with a solution. Clara let out a bitter laugh, her voice as sharp as the rain hitting the glass doors. What solution? A loan with outrageous interest? Or empty promises from a stranger? Julian took another step closer, standing near her. Not a loan, not empty promises. I'll cover all the costs for your father's surgery and any expenses for his recovery. Clara froze, skepticism flashing in her eyes. Why? Who are you? And why do you want to help me? Julian slowly sat down beside her, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. My name is Julian Fairchild. You can Google my family's wealth if you like, but I'm not doing this out of kindness. This is a transaction. Clara clenched her jaw, her defenses rising. What kind of transaction? Julian leaned back on the bench, his tone steady yet firm. I need someone to pretend to be my wife for 6 months, just long enough to convince my grandfather that I've settled down and am worthy of inheriting the family fortune. You're insane. Clara shot to her feet, her eyes blazing. What kind of person do you think I am? A puppet for you to manipulate? Julian remained composed. He looked up at her, his gaze unwavering. No, I think you're someone who's desperate. I'm not here to insult you. I'm offering an opportunity. This money means nothing to me, but for you, it could save your father's life. Clara turned away, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. Why me? You could find anyone else? Julian gave a faint smile. Maybe it's because I happen to be here. Or maybe it's because I see something in you, something convincing. You're not the kind of person my grandfather could easily doubt. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. And after 6 months, what happens? We'll divorce. Simple as that. You'll leave with a well-funded bank account, and I'll have what I need. Clara turned back, looking directly at him. Do you really think I will agree? Julian stood up, stepping closer to her. I think you will do anything to save your father. I'm not here to beg. I'm offering a choice. The decision is yours. After Julian left, Clara sat quietly in the hospital waiting room. His words echoed in her mind, a heavy rhythm she couldn't shake. Her father, Thomas Bennett, was everything to her. He had worked tirelessly his entire life to raise her, sacrificing everything to ensure she had a future. And now when he needed her the most, she felt powerless. But agreeing to Julian's offer meant losing a part of her pride. Pretending to be the wife of a cold-hearted millionaire, becoming a character in his stage play, was it truly worth it? All night Clara couldn't sleep. Her heart screamed against the idea, but her mind kept reminding her that without Julian, her father wouldn't survive. The choice wasn't really hers, was it? The next morning, when Clara found Julian in the hospital lobby, he still bore the same cold demeanor as the day before. I agree, she said, her voice quiet but firm. But I have one condition. Julian raised an eyebrow, a flicker of interest crossing his face. What condition? You must ensure that my father receives the best care, not just the surgery, but also throughout his recovery. And I want everything clearly outlined in a contract. I won't take any risks. Julian nodded, a faint smile appearing on his lips. I wouldn't expect anything less. My lawyer will arrange everything. Welcome to marriage, Clara. Clara stared at him, her eyes a mixture of determination and pain. Don't think I'm doing this for you. I'm only doing it for my father. Julian smiled, but in his gaze there was a flicker of admiration. And that's exactly what makes you perfect. What do you think of this story? If you were Clara, what decision would you make? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Will Clara truly take control of her choice, or is she stepping onto a path of no return? Clara Bennett stood before the large gates of the Fairchild estate, her heart pounding in her chest. The wrought iron gates, coated in sleek black paint, opened to reveal a world entirely different from her reality. The car carrying her rolled down the cobblestone path, leading to a grand mansion. Its ivory walls gleamed under the sunlight, with large windows draped in flowing silk curtains swaying gently in the breeze. Clara took a deep breath, trying to suppress her sense of displacement. This wasn't her home. She was just an outsider, stepping into a role to save her father. Julian appeared at the grand doorway, dressed impeccably in a gray suit. He didn't look at her for long, his gaze briefly passing over her, as though she were merely a tool. Welcome to my home, he said calmly, with no hint of warmth. My lawyer will explain the specifics of the contract. You should familiarize yourself with the schedule. Clara nodded without responding. Julian's cold and distant gaze made her feel small in this opulent world. From the very first day, Clara realized that the Fairchild Mansion was not just a home. It was a fortress of power and control. Everything here operated like a precise machine, from breakfast schedules to guest etiquette and strict behavioral rules. Even the staff moved with an uncanny precision, silent and efficient. Clara tried to adapt, but the sense of alienation lingered. Meanwhile, Julian barely paid attention to her. He was constantly busy with business calls, meetings, and social events. When they crossed paths during meals or in the hallways, he would simply nod politely, nothing more. This made Clara feel lonelier than ever, but she refused to let herself be weak. She was here for her father, not for herself. On the third morning at the mansion, Clara was summoned to Charles Fairchild's study. The elder Fairchild had heard about his grandson's new wife, but remained skeptical. Charles's study was a large room filled with old books and meticulously arranged valuable artifacts. Sitting behind a mahogany desk, Charles observed Clara from head to toe with sharp eyes. Well, he began, his voice deep and authoritative, you must be Clara Bennett. Clara tried to smile, but the intensity of Charles's gaze made it awkward. Yes, Mr. Fairchild, she replied. Charles nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving her. My grandson had many options, yet he chose you. Why? The question caught Clara off guard. How could she answer truthfully without revealing the transactional nature of their relationship? We found common ground, Clara said, striving to keep her voice steady. Perhaps we complement each other's shortcomings. Charles raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed with her response. Common ground, you say? Do you have the strength to endure the pressures of being part of the Fairchild family? Clara took a deep breath, meeting his scrutinizing gaze. I will do my best, not just for myself, but for Julian and this family. Her answer made Charles pause, his expression contemplative. He didn't say anything further, merely nodding slowly, but Clara could tell that his doubts remained. That afternoon, Clara met Evelyn Asor, Julian's ex-girlfriend, for the first time in the mansion's garden. Evelyn was stunningly perfect, dressed in a form-fitting designer gown with a smile as sharp as a blade. From the first glance, Clara felt the threat emanating from her. So, Evelyn began, her tone sweet but insincere, you're the one who's taken my place. Clara lifted her head, trying to remain calm. I don't think this is a competition to take anything from anyone. Evelyn smirked and stepped closer. You know, Julian and I used to be very happy, but he likes challenges, and I suppose you're just the latest one. Clara didn't respond, but her heart ached at the mocking words. Evelyn sneered and walked away, leaving behind a stifling sense of discomfort. Clara didn't have much time to regain her composure, as that evening was the family dinner hosted by Charles. Everyone gathered in the grand hall, the shimmering light from crystal chandeliers, making the space feel magical. Clara entered with Julian, trying to smile and remain composed under the scrutinizing gazes of the guests. Everything seemed to go smoothly until Evelyn appeared. She approached them with a provocative smile. Julian, it's been so long, Evelyn said, ignoring Clara's presence. I didn't expect you to get married so quickly. She's so ordinary. Clara felt the guest's eyes turn toward her. The public humiliation made her want to disappear from the room. But before she could say anything, Julian stepped forward, his gaze as sharp as a blade directed at Evelyn. Yes, I got married, and she's not just the one I chose. She's the one I need. Evelyn, if you can't respect my wife, perhaps you should leave. The room fell silent. Clara turned to look at Julian, her heart pounding. In his eyes, she saw a kind of protection she never thought she would receive. Evelyn froze, clearly not expecting Julian's reaction. She forced a strained smile, trying to regain her composure. Of course, I don't want to intrude. Best wishes to you both. After Evelyn left, Clara turned to Julian. Why did you do that? Julian shrugged, his voice still as cold as usual. It was necessary. We have to convince everyone, don't we? That morning, Clara walked into the dining room, her eyes briefly stopping as she saw Julian sitting alone at the table, holding a cup of black coffee, staring out the large window. The soft morning light fell gently on his face, melting away his usual cold demeanor. In that moment, Julian was no longer the self-assured millionaire she had imagined, but a man burdened with unseen thoughts and pressures he never revealed. You're up early, Clara said, breaking the silence. Julian turned his head, his blue eyes softer than usual, as if they lightened slightly upon seeing her. Just a habit, he replied, his voice deep but warm. And you? Did you sleep well? Clara sat down across from him, lightly sipping a cup of tea that the housekeeper had just brought in. I did, she answered with a faint smile, but I don't think I'll ever get used to such a big bed. It feels so unfamiliar. Julian chuckled softly, a rare but genuine sound. Then we're alike. This house, it never really feels like home. Clara was momentarily surprised by his confession. She had never imagined that Julian, the man who owned an immense fortune, could feel out of place in his own world. But his gaze, deep and conflicted, made her realize that Julian too was wrestling with his own burdens. Then what keeps you here? She asked, her eyes fixed on him. Julian remained silent, his eyes clouded with contemplation. Maybe because I don't know where else to go, he replied, his tone reflective. Clara fell quiet at his answer. In that moment, she felt the loneliness in his words, a feeling she understood better than anyone. She said nothing, but her gentle gaze seemed to convey that he didn't have to fight his battles alone. In the days that followed, Clara began to notice Julian more, and Julian, in turn, found himself drawn to her presence. He couldn't help but observe how Clara quietly navigated the rigid rules of the house, how she seemed indifferent to the extravagance or the rumors swirling around her. But what truly captivated him was how she cared for her father, from the daily health checkup calls to the concern in her eyes whenever she mentioned him. As for Clara, she realized Julian wasn't entirely the cold man she had thought. When she saw him in quiet moments, like that morning, she saw a more authentic side of him, a man searching for something even if he himself didn't yet realize it. One late weekend afternoon, Julian knocked on Clara's door with an inscrutable expression. "Come with me," he said, holding a hat in his hand. "Where to?" she asked, her eyes a mix of curiosity and caution. "You'll see when we get there," he replied, a rare glimmer of mischief in his eyes. Clara hesitated but eventually nodded, stepping out to follow him. They passed through the mansion's main garden, walking down a small tree-shaded path. Finally, they stopped before an old iron gate, half covered with green ivy. "The secret garden," Julian said, pushing the gate open. Inside was a completely different world. Wildflowers lined the pathways, a small pond reflected the sunlight, and weathered wooden benches stood silently, worn by time. Clara was astonished. "Is this where you hide when you want to escape the world?" she asked, her eyes filled with curiosity. Julian nodded, walking to a bench near the pond and sitting down. "I don't bring anyone here, but I thought you might understand this feeling." Clara sat beside him, taking in the rare tranquility of the place. "Why me?" she asked softly, almost in a whisper. Julian was silent for a moment, his gaze distant before turning back to meet hers. "You're not like anyone else. You don't try to change me or take anything from me, and I think you see me for who I really am." The words left Clara stunned. She looked deeply into his eyes, sensing the rare sincerity in his voice. For the first time, she saw Julian not just as the heir to an empire, but as a man searching for a genuine connection. Clara gently began to share about her father, the sacrifices he had made for her, and the pain of watching him struggle with illness. As she spoke of her father, her eyes shone with deep love, and Julian couldn't help but be moved. "And you?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Why do you feel trapped?" Julian gave a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I don't know. Since I was a child, I was destined to be the heir, to protect this legacy. But no one ever asked if I wanted it." Clara remained silent, sensing the weight of his words. She gently said, "Maybe it's time for you to start from what you truly want." Julian turned to look at her, his blue eyes gentle but glimmering with thought. "Maybe you're right," he replied, his voice warm, almost introspective. Julian no longer kept his distance as before. Their shared breakfast became warmer, filled with light-hearted conversations. Clara began to notice Julian smiling more often, and each of his smiles warmed her heart. As for Julian, he couldn't stop himself from being drawn into Clara's little world. The way she cared, the way she lived not for herself, but for the people she loved, made him want to protect her, not just because of the agreement with his grandfather, but because she had truly found her way into his heart. But those feelings didn't come without challenges. Evelyn Asor, Julian's ex-girlfriend, continued to show up, deliberately sowing seeds of insecurity into their relationship. One time at a family gathering, Evelyn casually approached Julian, placing her hand on his shoulder and whispering something in his ear right in front of Clara. Clara didn't say a word, but her eyes clearly reflected her hurt. For the first time, Julian felt uncomfortable to the point of not being able to ignore it. He stepped in front of Evelyn, his voice cold yet firm. "Don't ever do that again." Evelyn widened her eyes in disbelief at Julian's reaction. "I was just talking." "We have nothing more to talk about," Julian interrupted. "Clara is my wife, and I won't allow anyone to make her feel hurt, not even a little." Clara stood there looking at Julian with astonishment in her eyes. He wasn't just defending her because of his grandfather's presence. It seemed to stem from something much deeper. When the party ended, Julian quietly approached Clara, his eyes filled with regret. "I'm sorry for letting you go through that," he said softly. Clara looked at him, her eyes reflecting a gentle warmth. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for standing up for me." Their feelings for each other grew in ways neither of them could have anticipated. Julian had always believed his life was purely pragmatic, cold, and devoid of emotion. But ever since Clara had entered his life, initially as part of an arrangement, everything began to shift, leaving him in constant turmoil. Clara was unlike anyone Julian had ever met. She didn't try to impress him or vie for his attention. Instead, she possessed a sincerity and resilience he had never encountered. She stepped into his world with a clear purpose: to save her father. Yet it was her way of facing every challenge, from the tense family gatherings to Evelyn's taunts, that drew him to her. At first, Julian told himself that these feelings were fleeting, but gradually, through small moments, like the way Clara smiled while gazing out at the garden, or how she stood unfazed before his grandfather's probing questions, he realized he was captivated by her. Each day, he discovered new things about her care for her father, her gentleness in her words, and her relentless fight to stay true to herself. What changed everything, however, was the secret garden. It was Julian's refuge from the pressures of the world, but being there with Clara, he felt safe in an entirely different way. She shared stories of her childhood, the struggles she and her father had endured, and Julian realized he didn't just admire her, he had fallen in love with her. That love didn't come easily for Julian. He feared that his world, filled with calculations and expectations, would hurt Clara. But as time went on, the fear of losing her outweighed everything else. When Evelyn tried to belittle Clara, Julian found himself unable to stay silent. He defended her not just because of the agreement, but because she had become the most important thing in his life. Julian realized that Clara hadn't just changed how he saw her, she had changed him. For the first time, he wanted something not out of responsibility or gain. He wanted Clara, not as part of an arrangement, but as part of his life. And now his greatest fear was losing her, knowing that the love he felt for her was the most real thing he had ever experienced. As for Clara, she couldn't pinpoint when her feelings for Julian had begun. Perhaps it was during the mornings when his gaze lingered on her, no longer cold but surprisingly tender. Or maybe it was the time he took her to the secret garden, a place where he shared deeply personal thoughts she believed no one else had ever heard. In those moments, Clara realized that Julian wasn't just the heir to a wealthy family, but a man wrestling with his own burdens, much like herself. The moment he defended her from Evelyn, Clara felt that Julian wasn't just protecting her, but also making her feel like she truly mattered to him. Yet she withdrew, reminding herself that this was just an agreement. "He doesn't belong to me," she repeated to herself, trying to build a wall between them. During mornings at the breakfast table, Clara maintained a calm smile, even as her heart raced whenever Julian looked at her longer than usual. During family gatherings, she played her role flawlessly, concealing any emotions. But late at night, as she sat by the window watching the moonlight stretch across the garden, she knew her heart had tilted entirely toward him. To Clara, Julian wasn't just an arrogant millionaire. He was someone who gradually revealed his hidden depths, someone who smiled sincerely when no one was watching, and someone who offered her a gentleness she hadn't expected. But Clara was still afraid that if she fully stepped into his world, everything would collapse, leaving her unable to mend a heart that had already fallen deeply in love with him. With each passing day, her feelings for Julian grew stronger. At the same time, her fears also intensified. She knew only one thing for certain: she loved him, but she didn't dare hope that her love would be reciprocated. And if one day the agreement came to an end, she would have to learn how to leave his life, even though her heart had already become irrevocably tied to him. Then the storm came once more. Evelyn was not one to give up easily. With the keen intuition of someone who had once been close to Julian, it didn't take her long to notice that something was off. One afternoon, while strolling through the Fairchild Estates grounds, she overheard a conversation between Clara and one of the household staff. A snippet of Clara's words. "Even if it's just an agreement, but I immediately caught Evelyn's attention. "An agreement," Evelyn whispered, a malicious smile spreading across her face. After a few days of digging, Evelyn finally pieced everything together. When she discovered that Julian and Clara's marriage was a sham, she wasted no time plotting to use this information to achieve her goal, bringing Julian back to her. During an encounter with Julian in the office at the estate, Evelyn seized her opportunity. "How interesting," she began, her eyes gleaming with amusement. "Your perfect marriage turns out to be nothing but a charade." Julian spun around, his gaze icy. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn advanced slowly but confidently, like a predator closing in on its prey. "I know everything, Julian. She's just a pawn, isn't she? An arrangement to secure your inheritance. But listen to me, I'll keep this secret, on one condition." "What do you want?" Julian growled, his patience wearing thin. Evelyn smirked. "I want you to come back to me. If you don't, I'll tell your grandfather everything. I'm sure Charles will be deeply disappointed to learn the truth." A few days later, during an important family dinner, Evelyn decided to act. She appeared unexpectedly, confidently, walking into the dining room with her usual flawless appearance. Julian and Clara sat side by side, trying to maintain their composure. But Evelyn's presence made the atmosphere tense. "It's wonderful to be here," Evelyn said, her gaze sweeping over Clara with disdain. "Of course, I couldn't miss such a special occasion, especially with Julian's marriage drawing so much attention." Charles, seated at the head of the table, glanced at Evelyn with a curious look. "What do you mean, Evelyn?" Evelyn took a sip of wine, carefully choosing her words. "Oh, I'm just wondering if anyone has thought about the real reason behind this marriage. Is it all genuine?" Her final words landed like a dagger aimed directly at Julian and Clara. Clara felt her chest tighten, while Julian placed his hand over hers under the table, as if to reassure her. But Charles's eyes remained fixed on them. Leaning forward, his voice was low but sharp. "Julian, what is this about?" After dinner, Charles summoned Julian to his private library. The room, lined with towering bookshelves, became the stage for a confrontation. "Evelyn hinted at something tonight," Charles began, his voice cold. "I want the truth from you." Julian took a deep breath, knowing he had no other choice. "Yes, grandfather," he began, his tone steady despite the turmoil inside. "At first, this marriage was an agreement. I needed someone to convince you that I had matured, and Clara needed financial help to save her father." Charles stood silently, his face giving nothing away. But before he could respond, Julian pressed on, his voice growing stronger. "But everything has changed. She is no longer just part of the agreement. I love Clara. I truly love her." The confession hung in the silence of the library. Julian felt as if he had just lifted a tremendous weight off his shoulders, but Charles's reaction remained cold. "Love?" Charles sneered, his voice laced with skepticism. "Do you think love can fix everything?" Julian stepped forward, his eyes filled with determination. "I don't expect you to believe me right away, but I will prove it to you. She is not just part of a plan. She is the person I want to spend my life with." Charles studied him for a long moment before slowly nodding. "I'm not pleased, Julian, but I will give you a chance. Let's see if your words hold true. I will be watching both of you." Do you think Julian and Clara have the strength to overcome Charles's challenge? And what will Evelyn do next to make things difficult for them? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The weeks following the confrontation with grandfather Charles saw a lighter atmosphere in the Fairchild estate, though the underlying tension remained. Julian knew he couldn't delay any longer. He didn't just want to prove to his grandfather that his love was real. He also wanted Clara to know she was no longer just part of a plan. She was his entire world. One afternoon, Julian led Clara to the secret garden, where they had once shared heartfelt stories. The flowers were in full bloom under the late afternoon sun, creating a dreamlike setting. "Clara," Julian began, his voice warm but laden with emotion. "When we first met, I didn't believe in love. I thought everything was just transactions and responsibilities. But you changed everything." Clara looked at him, her heart racing. Julian's gaze lacked the coldness she had once seen in him. Instead, it held a raw sincerity. "You've taught me that some things can't be bought, like honesty, love, and the true meaning of life. I don't want you to just be part of a plan anymore. I want you to be my future." Julian knelt down and produced a meticulously crafted ring, its diamonds sparkling under the sunlight. Clara Bennett, will you marry me? Not because of an arrangement, but because of love? Clara couldn't hold back her tears. All the pain, the hurt, and the doubts she had felt seemed to dissolve. She smiled through her tears and nodded. Yes, I will. Julian stood, pulling her into his embrace. They kissed amid the blooming flowers, under the golden hues of the setting sun, their love no longer bound by anything but their hearts. Their wedding was held in the very same secret garden, where their love had truly blossomed. The setting was adorned with white ribbons and hundreds of fresh flowers. Close friends and family gathered, including Grandfather Charles, who sat in the front row with an inscrutable expression. Clara appeared in a wedding dress that was both elegant and simple, yet stunningly beautiful. She walked down the aisle under the admiring gazes of all present. Julian, waiting at the end of the aisle, never once took his eyes off her. When they stood before the officiant, their vows carried no pretense or obligation. Julian looked at Clara, his voice trembling with sincerity. Clara, you've shown me that life isn't just about success or power. You are the reason I want to be a better man, a man worthy of your love. Clara replied, her voice trembling, yet filled with emotion. Julian, you've proven to me that people can change. You didn't just save my life and my father's. You saved my heart. As they exchanged rings, applause erupted from those gathered. Grandfather Charles, usually reserved in his expressions, rose and initiated a round of clapping, his eyes shining with pride. It was a moment when Julian and Clara knew they had truly won, not just in love, but in acceptance. Evelyn, standing at a distance, watched the scene silently. She knew she could no longer break their bond. For the first time in her life, Evelyn felt like an outsider. After the wedding, she left the Fairchild estate, leaving the past behind. After the wedding, Julian and Clara began building a new life together. The Fairchild estate, once a place filled with tension and pressure, now became a true home. They often hosted family dinners with Grandfather Charles, who had transformed from a commanding leader into a beloved grandfather. Julian continued managing the corporation, but with a new perspective. He no longer saw it as a burden, but as an opportunity to create a better future. Clara, with growing confidence, became involved in charitable projects, using the Fairchild family's resources to help those in need. Their love became a testament that even relationships born from an agreement could become genuine, as long as both partners offered sincerity and respect to each other. Standing on the balcony of the estate during a sunset, Julian held Clara in his arms and whispered, "Thank you, Clara, for coming into my life. I can't imagine living without you." Clara smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "I thank you too, Julian. My life has never felt as complete as it does now." Under the golden hues of the sunset, they looked toward the future, a future not perfect, but filled with hope, love, and true happiness. Thank you for following this story to the end. If you found it meaningful, please hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel to spread positive messages. Would you like to see more touching stories like this? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any videos.